What secrets are hidden in the 10th relationship between KC and Damon? As KC's 18th birthday approaches, will she discover who her mate is? Ready to witness how KC plays her game of revenge? Subscribe to our channel and don't miss a moment of the excitement. Chapter 16. No, I'm not famous. People's heads turned, jaws dropped, eyes widened. My converse battered against the tiles of the school hallway, but my lace-lined hips swaying from side to side. My crimson-red lips were in a slight pout, my wavy black hair straightened and cascading down my shoulders. Amber had helped me with my makeup that morning, my eyeshadow smoky grey and accentuating my steel-grey eyes. My eyebrows were done and a coating of ruby-red lipstick had been added to my full lips, bright against my naturally pale skin. Amongst my new wardrobe from my mom, I was able to pull out a small black skirt, accompanied by fishnet stockings, and a long-sleeved, silk-red blouse that accentuated my curves and lips. If this didn't capture the attention of anyone of the opposite sex, I don't know what would. I smirked to myself when I reached my locker, pulling out the books I needed and stuffing my backpack into the locker. I had caught the attention of pretty much every guy in the hallway, which added to Damon's possession and jealousy problem and advantaging me perfectly in this war. I heard a familiar voice ask from behind. I turned around to grin at Justin, his eyes widening as he observed my outfit, taking in everything. I had been the girl just Friday wearing jeans, a shredded tee, and combat boots. This was going to be a big surprise for a lot of people. Maybe even more of a surprise than my big return. That would be me. I grinned, taking a step closer towards him. Hearing the slight hint of humor I hid in my seductive voice. "You look amazing," he complimented, glancing at my lips before returning his gaze back to my eyes. "Thanks," I purred, making the space between us barely an inch. Hesitantly, just unwrapped his arms around my waist, putting me to him. Grinning, I put my palms to his chest, feeling his rock-hard ABS just beneath my fingers through the thin layer of polyester. It looked as though he was about to say something, but before he could, I couldn't help but crash my lips to his arms immediately tightening around me, pressing me against his body. Our lips moved in a passionate sync, burning through me, breaking my wolf's longing for Damon. Carefully as in, calmly so not to attract too much unless-so-noted attention, I pushed Justin against the lockers, my wolf howling with the pleasure of dominance and control, something Damon would never have given me. Suddenly, the bell sentencing first period rang loudly just above our heads, tearing us apart. He chuckled awkwardly, running a hand through his hair as I smiled to myself, pleased, as I grabbed for my books. "Meet me in the library after school to continue our discussion. To my agent extraordinaire, Myron Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Biting my lip as a lure, knowing he couldn't say no. "I'll see you there," he grinned, shoving his hands into his pockets before he walked off towards his class. I lingered in the hallway for a second longer, relishing and reliving the past few wonderful seconds. I was just about to head off towards class when I caught sight of Damon at the other end of the hallway, his eyes a mix of black and brown as he glared in my direction. "Perfect." I winked, waving my fingers at him as I strutted off towards my first period class, feeling wonderfully proud of my little game that I just put into play. I could honestly say that I was rather disappointed when the end of the day bell rang. Every second for the whole 8 hours that I was in school, at least one guy was drooling over me in each and every one of my classes. Even some of the girls couldn't believe how the not long ago ugly Katie Blasey was now, in one day, the hottest girl in Ashington High School. What can I say? Makeup can bring a girl a long way. "Looks like all is according to plan," Maggie whispered to me as we gathered our things at the bell, heading out of the classroom. I grinned. I couldn't have agreed more. It's better than I thought. Especially on the first day. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, hearts out thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Running a hand through my hair, feeling rather proud about it. Justin loves it. Damon can barely keep it in his pants. And every boy that didn't know I existed before my return was practically drooling their own rivers. I chuckled, amused lie. Maggie grinned in agreement, giving off her own little giggle. We parted when I reached my locker, throwing some books in and pulling out my bag, hitching it onto my shoulder. Just as I slammed my locker shut, in the middle of the chaotic and crowded hallway, I felt a hot breath fell against the back of my neck, goosebumps racing along my arms. I didn't have a single doubt who it was that stood right behind me. Ever heard of personal space? Glancing back up, Damon. He stood barely a foot away from me, his dark eyes observing my face and quickly glancing down at my body. Thank God for womanly curves. Turning all the way around, I crossed my arms, smiling up at the big bad alpha before me. What's the matter? She-wolf got your tongue. I cocked my head to the side in mock wonder, slightly pouting as I fluttered my eyelashes innocently. Don't worry, she doesn't bite. Before adding, what are you playing at? There's E. Narrowing his eyes at me, but I could see his wolf in his eyes, aroused and wanting, begging. Oh, nothing at all. Mr. Fallon, absolutely nothing. I taunted, revealing a sly wolfish grin. His jaw tightened. I knew he was fighting with his instinct, his eyes flickering black. I don't appreciate being toyed with, he growled menacingly, however quietly enough for only my ears to hear. Rolling my eyes as though I thought he was being silly. No one's toying with anyone, yet I purred, biting my bottom lip. He flinched and I knew he was on the verge of losing to his wolf, announcing my show was about over. Speaking of, I have places to be, people to see. I hitched my bag farther onto my shoulder, shifting on my feet. To less, waving my fingers as I slid past him, giving an added sway to my hips to grab his attention. It was almost immediately that I felt his eyes piercing my backside. Wonderful. Straightening myself up, I made my way to the library, pleased to see, like always, it was almost deserted. Not even the librarian was at her desk. Probably off slithering towards the teacher's lounge to practice her scowling, I thought humorously to myself. Before making my way to the back corner, where I'm sure Justin was waiting, I quickly pulled out my compact and ruffled my hair so that it was messy, but in a sexy kind of way. I add a new coat of crims and lipstick to my full lips, forming a slight pout. Once I deemed myself ready, I stuffed the compact back into my bag and casually walked through the bookshelves to the corner, grinning when I saw Justin leaning against the table. He smiled when he saw me, righting himself. Dropping my bag, I snaked my arms around his neck as his arms wrapped around my waist, pressing me to his body. So he smiled. Where were we? He closed the space between us, pressing his lips to mine. What started as an innocent kiss quickly bloomed into something more passionate, our lips moving in fast sync. I wrapped my leg around his as his hand slid down to my thigh, his other hand on the curve of my back. He picked me up and placed me on the table, leaning over me as we continued kissing. We parted for breath when his lips traveled down my jaw, moving down and placing gentle kisses on my neck. I tilted my head back to give him better access, his warm breath against my skin sending adrenaline rushing through my body. Quickly I found his lips again, enjoying the pleasure he brought to my body. My wolf was ravaged on the inside, howling and begging to take this boy, to destroy the mate that rejected us. Justin's love brought her the love Damon shouldn't, and she reveled in every bit of him. Though I couldn't care less about Damon rejecting me as his mate, My wolf instincts were crushed and pained, but very hungry. The human boy Justin would have to do, and he was just perfect for me. Chapter 17 Furry Love. Smooth hate Damon's P.O.V. I watched KC as she walked away, her long black hair flowing behind her. I wanted her so much. I hated her so much, more than I had before. What I did back in middle school was harmless fun of my own. It was funny to my friends and me to see her reactions, watching her wail or cry in 7th grade. All I could think of was how pathetic she was, but she took the game to the next level. The moment she stepped into that cafeteria in her skinny jeans and black leather jacket, I knew she was ready to start a new round. The way she eyed everybody like prey. How she went for the kill at the mall when she attacked Chloe and her friends. Videos and pictures were all over YouTube and Facebook. She planted the trap for Alistair and Jeff, knowing where they would be and when. I knew it was my turn for her gain, but I expected something more humiliating. This was manipulative and torturous, hitting me where it hurt most. It actually made me wish she had gotten the same revenge on me the way she had on Luke. In the alpha of my own freaking pack. How could it be possible that I was stuck with that miserable excuse of a werewolf? If people besides my weak beta and KCS friends figured out that KCS my mate, my life would be awful. My reputation would be destroyed. Yo, Damon. Dude, where are you? Dan's voice tore into my thoughts. I glanced over at him, his signature grin cutting across his face. What? I asked annoyed, wishing I could go after Casey. I had a pretty good idea where she was and who she was with, and my wolf didn't like it one bit. But at the same time I cowled and give a damn who she lip-locked with. We have patrol today. Remember, he dragged on, hitching his backpack up onto his shoulder. A low growl ruptured from my chest as I glanced in the direction Casey left before looking back at Dan. Yeah, whatever, I muttered, quickly walking down the corridor towards my car outside. As I passed the library, I cowled and helped but glanced towards the doors, growling when I noticed Casey on the other side. Ruffling her hair, she pursed her lips into the mirror of a small compact. No doubt that human boy, Justin, was in there. Fighting my instincts, I moved on, not glancing back again at her as I pushed through the doors and across the parking lot, furiously climbing into my car. I prowled through the brush, my belly low and close to the forest floor. Dan was a few feet to my right, vigorously sniffing the air, his muzzle raised towards the sky. I knew he could smell it to the sour scents of nightshades, decay, and grass. The rogues had been there recently. Their tracks were still fresh. They're coming closer, Dan stated, his eyes narrowing. We caught their scent a week before, not far from the pack house, maybe 2 miles deeper into the woods. We barely patrolled a mile before we caught their scent the next time. Don't you think it's time we've told the pack about them? What if they strike? We're not exactly prepared, Dan added a few minutes later, glancing towards me. I flicked my ears as I stared back at him, deciding what we should do. Well, tell Ben tonight. See what he wants to do, I replied, hating to have to turn to the older beta for his thought, but I wasn't positive on what else to do. I had only inherited the pack barely 2 months before. Yes, sir, Dan said lightly, continuing to move forward through the thickening brush. I hesitantly continued on behind him, hearing the gentle trickle of the stream ahead. I winced once I stepped through the brush, my paws touching the rough gravel of the shore. KC's fading scent swept across my face, making the hairs bristle between my shoulders. The sweet scent of lavender. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks to your unfading patience, enthusiasm. And ivy still lingered in the air from the other day. I needed her, but I was disgusted by her. Wealth, that's a familiar scent, Dan hissed coldly, glaring up at me as he pressed his nose to the ground where I remember KC had tackled me. I growled at him, flattening my ears against the top of my head assertively. He didn't say more as he moved on, sniffing around the shore. I knew he was pissed about me rejecting KC, considering his dad was pressuring me in finding my lunar, telling me a bunch of crap that it would be easier to have someone by my side, supporting me and helping control the large pack. Unconsciously, I pulled at the spot where I had tackled KC, her set strongest there on the sand. Once I realized I was doing it, I growled at myself, shaking my head as I moved on. The rogue scent had also gotten stronger around the stream, almost fresh, probably passed through there not hours before. I don't like this one bit, Dan said, his ears flat and against his head as the hairs around his shoulders rose uneasily. Me neither. I think it's time we've told Ben, I sighed resentfully, hating the idea of the whole situation. If these rogues were getting closer, we needed more patrol and protection. Only their scent is strong, but they haven't been seen. I'm sure the first thing Ben was going to do was send out a team to patrol and track down where the scents are coming from. I didn't wait for a response from Dan as I turned and sprinted through the brush back towards the pack house. I think mostly because I wanted to get out of there and away from KC's overwhelming scent, taking over my instinct. I knew her malicious game was going to test my strength as an alpha if I can't fight my own wolf. Then, what could I fight? As I exited my room after getting dressed, I saw a thin black wolf slink out of KC's room. Her coat was silky looking, soft and groomed. Her eyes gave off a metallic glow, like freshly polished silver. She glanced in my direction, her ears playfully flickering as she trotted by. My wolf clawed at me, eager to follow her as she disappeared down the stairs, but I fought against him, forcing my feet towards Ben's room upstairs, in the beta suite. I didn't bother knocking before walking in, John's and Ben's eyes darting up at me as I approached the table the two of them stood in front of. Dan says there's something you wanted to talk about. Ben gestured, Dan leaning against the table nervously. Yes, Mr. Smith, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Dan and I caught the scent of rogues not even 2 miles away from here. They're getting closer every day, I informed, crossing my arms. Ben's eyes dropped before looking back up sternly at me, glancing once in Dan's direction. Are you boys absolutely positive? He questioned, sternly looking from me to Dan. Dan sighed. Dad, I know their scent. I'm 100% positive, he grimly replied. I knew what he was thinking about once he had said that his mother. She was killed 3 years ago when she went to visit another pack not too far from here for a meeting. The rogue struck when she was in the meeting room, killing 2 other beta mates from another pack, an alpha, and 3 healers. If Ben hadn't been sick that day, he could have been murdered too. He has to suffer the loss of his mate. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You'll get some people out there tonight. Enthusiasm, in the meanwhile, don't stray too far except for Schooland within a single-mile radius from here. We'll make the announcement tomorrow once the team returns with news. Ben said, his voice soft and strained. I knew he was reliving the pain of his mate. I nodded with finality and began to leave when he stopped me. Just on a quick note, Alpha Damon, have you found your mate yet? Ben interrogated. My jaw clenched tightly as KC's face flashed through my mind at the mention of mate. There was just one other reason why I didn't want to confront Ben about it, yet he asks whether or not I've found my mate yet. No, not yet, I responded plainly. I heard Dan sigh loudly and Ben cleared his throat, signaling that we were finished for the evening. Chapter 18 forcefully caged Damon's P. O.V. I stuffed my backpack into my locker, barely paying attention to Luke going on and on about the basketball game I missed the night before because of patrolling. Dan leaned against the lockers casually, nodding once in a while and pretending to be listening to Luke. Chidi barely said a word to me since the night before, but if you asked me, I preferred him that way. Grabbing my books, I slammed my locker shut and was about to head off to my first period class when my shoulders unintentionally tensed and the temperature in the hallway seemed to have risen. Dan chuckled, crossing his arms. Luke stopped talking in mid-sentence, his face blank as he stared down the hall. I didn't have to turn around to know what they were staring at, but I glanced back anyway. KC stalked down the hall in a pair of skin, tight leather pants that outlined her long slim legs. A loafy, neck, midnight blue shirt hugged her body, bringing out her womanly curves. Her raven black hair was wavy, falling down her shoulders. I was practically drooling. A growl escaped my lips when I noticed it was draped around her shoulders. Justin. KC giggled as he spoke to her, a smile on his own lips. My wolf hated seeing another male holding my mate, but I fought against him, trying to keep him caged along with my instincts. As KC and Justin walked by, her molted grey eyes flickered in my direction, a crimson smile forming on her lips. Her scent washed over me, testing my ability to keep my wolf locked up. Crushing the textbook in my hand was all I could do to prevent myself from tearing Justin to shreds before claiming my mate. That wolf's Blair's E that just walked by with just unpractically wrapped around her finger. Luke gaped, clearly just as shocked as the rest of the guy population in Ashington. Oh, you bet it was. Dan grinned slyly, his eyes flickering from me to Luke. Why do you care anyway? He added with a tease. I was in I don't care. I was just about to ask if she got into some serious car accident that messed up her face or something. Luke stuttered, trying to replace it with his signature cool guy grin. As his words processed through my mind, my wolf became furious that Luke was dissing my mate. Shut up, I gnawed, shoving Luke against the lockers. My wolf had finally broken free, my fangs elidinating, bearing fiercely towards Luke. I just barely heard Dart snicker as my fist tight and around the collar of Luke's Ashington football jersey, my claws threatening to tear into his flesh. Chill, man, Luke tried to say calmly, but his voice rising in fear. What's got you so hot-headed? It's just Blazy. His words breaking into my mind. Oh, you'll tell you it's got him so freaking aggressive. Dan tore in, looking almost excited to spill what he had on the tip of his tongue. Before he could open his mouth, I snarled at him, releasing Luke. He didn't even wince as he kept his smirk but closed his mouth. Luke's eyebrows came together, and he opened his mouth as if he was about to ask when the bell rang and I stormed away from them before anything else could be said. Splashing cold water onto my face, I leaned against the sink as I stared at myself in the scratched and chipped mirror in the boys' bathroom at school. My wolf was tearing me up on the inside, practically clawing his way through me. I'd seen KC sitting on Justin's lap at lunch, the two of them talking quietly to each other and sometimes with KC as friends who were also at the table. Why did I freaking care? I hate her, I whispered to myself, repeating it over and over again through gritted teeth, trying to get myself to believe I still did. She's worthless, I continued, gripping the sides of the sink. I was surprised they hadn't shattered already from my tightening grip. She's not my mate, I growled, forbidding myself from accepting it. I would not give in to that low-level she-wolf. I was far stronger than she was. I could play her game just as well as she could. The bathroom door suddenly swung open and the scent that haunted me floated in, making my body rigid. Converse scapped against the tile floor. Whoops, this isn't the girls' bathroom. KC's voice was sickly sweet, echoing in the small bathroom. I glared up at her, a sly smirk on her face. From only a few feet away, she looked hotter, her blue and black attire reminding me of something of the magical world. "What do you want, Jealousy?" I demanded, denying my wolf that was aroused by just her presence. She chuckled, her captivating eyes glimmering mischievously as she took a few steps closer, crossing her arms. I gulped, my eyes involuntarily flickering towards her accentuated chest. "Oh, Mr. Fanon, it's not what I want," she purred, slowly walking closer to me, her voice mesmerizing. She came up behind me, gently wrapping her arms around my waist. Her hot breath fell against the crook of my neck as she leaned her head in, her lips brushing along my ear. "I think it's what you want," she whispered, nipping my ear. A shiver traveled down my spine, my wolf tamed, relishing the warmth and attention of my mate. She giggled while her hands moved up to my chest. She placed a soft and tender kiss just behind my jaw. As I managed to escape my lips, my fingers beginning to crack the porcelain of the sink. "She was killing me," she sighed, goosebumps racing along my arms. "Too bad you had asked." Her nails broke skin, making me wince. Crushed, her claws flicked out, tearing deeper into my flesh, forcing a pained moan. And rejected me, she dragged her claws from the center of my chest to under my arms, drawing blood. The porcelain sink broke from my grip as I used it to support myself when my legs felt weak. I glanced up at KC's reflection in the mirror as she pulled away from me, her claws disappearing from the tips of her fingers. "You could have had a chance, Damon," she cooed, her eye flickering from black to silver like her wolf, to steel grey like her normal shade. "But when you called me pathetic, that's when you shattered any forgiveness I had buried deep down," she growled before disappearing from the mirror's angle. Her Converse, hour-added feet echoed against the tiles until the door swung open, her footsteps fading away. I cringed as blood seeped through the 10 long, deep scratches that decorated my skin from my center to my side, staining my white shirt red. The werewolf healing process was slow to begin because I had been cut off from KC's seductive technique. I growled at myself for giving in to her, for letting her get close to me, but her touch seemed to have coursed through me, making me more instinctual than man. She was toying with me, her alpha, and I despised it. It was my turn to hit her hard, where her only weak point was, and just like me, it was both our strongest and weakest traits. Our wolf instincts. Chapter 19 Toys and Games P. "Oh, you need to learn to keep your trap shut." Then I snarled, shoving my bait up against the wall outside his door at the pack house. That was the first time I had seen him that day after he almost spilled the secret out to Luke. "I don't know what you're talking about, dude," he replied infuriately, a grin twitching on his lips. I snarled at him, shoving him harder against the wall. "Should I help you remember?" I threatened, wrapping a hand around his neck as I pulled my fist back, growing more furious as his grin spread wider. "You know, it's starting to all come back to me," he chuckled. "It's going to come out sooner or later," he taunted, his eyes flashing amber. "It won't as long as I say it won't," I warned, my hand tightening around his neck lightly. Dan just rolled his eyes. "I don't know about that, Damon. You may be the alpha, but KC was born a lunar. I'm just eager to see how long you'll last." He laughed, obviously amused. I grunted, shoving him as I released him, storming away before I let my wolf take over. "Oh, Damon, there you are." I turned to see Ben hurrying down the hall towards me, his expression grave and sullen. "We found something, for miles out. Looks like they have a camp in the woods only about 6 miles from here. They had guards circling for miles away," he informed, his voice low and secretive. "We're holding a pack meeting in about 10 minutes. Make sure you're either." "You, Dan," and other fighters will need to be training the younger ones. Sure. Whatever, I muttered, pushing past him and down the flights of stairs. I stood at the front of the room, watching as my packmates file into the room. I stood behind Ben and Dan, eyeing everyone who walked in. My body stiffened and my breath hitched when Casey walked in, heading towards the couch. She, with her 3 friends, jumped onto the backboard, crossing their legs as they eyed everyone else. Ben then cleared his throat, silencing the room, all their worried eyes darting towards him. I'm sure you're all curious as to why I've asked you to all come here, so I'm just going to say it. Ben stated clearly. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Logan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. A large group of them not far from here, he advised. Murmurs and gasps flew into the air, eyes widening and jaws dropping. Now I understand that many of you are worried. It wouldn't be a first time rogues messed with our pack. His voice faltered a bit, Dan nervously shifting on his feet. We plan on preparing ourselves. Older ones are going to be sent on more patrols daily. The younger ones will only be allowed to leave the pack house if they are together and can only travel to school in here. The youngest will not be able to leave the safety of the pack house at all for any reason, Ben added, his look hard and stern as he glanced over the crowd, observing every owner's faces. It will be required, however, that for the time being, maneuvers, strategies, and other techniques will be practiced and taught. Well, me volunteers to assist. Alpha Damon and Dan will be instructing evenings. You'll need to know if there is anyone else who is good in a fight, he went on. I noticed a hand shoot into the air, my eyes darting to the volunteer. New York ain't exactly the most pleasant and friendly place to live if you know what I'm saying. KC smirked slyly. I took a few self-defense classes, picked up some useful techniques of my own that might come in handy. My fist clenched tightly by my sides. My eyes locked on my freaking mate. Daisy. Her words were music to my wolf's ears. Just seeing her sitting there and hearing her enticing voice was enough to make my wolf ravage. I felt her eyes on me, bringing myself back into reality to face her. Her lips curled into a smile that made my muscles tense and my throat go dry. She licked her dry lips, her eyes glimmering slyly. I felt my canines elongate, my wolf tearing through me. I needed to get out of there before I blew, before I did something I would regret. As Ben continued on, I quickly snuck out of there, making my way back to my room. If Casey wanted to tear me apart and have fun with it, I should do exactly the same. Please. She was still the same wannabe she was in middle school. Nothing's changed. I could still see right through her. KCSP. Ovi. I grinned as I watched Damon escape the room, no one else taking notice. Oh, this was fun. More fun than blowing his family jewels off with firecrackers. My eyes flashed towards Dan, who grinned, his arms folding as he took a proud posture. As weird as Dan was, he was very useful. The meeting went on for another hour, nearly boring me to death. When it was over, I was the first to get out of there, practically fleeing to my room before anyone could stop me. The hallway leading to my bedroom was still deserted, all the teens still downstairs probably bombarding the baiters with questions and concerns. I ran a hand through my messy hair hurriedly as I slipped into my room. I escaped my lips just as I was walking towards my bed when I was suddenly shoved against the wall, my heart racing in my chest. The scent of burning wooden hazel filled the air and a shiver vibrated my spine. I looked up into the black, brown eyes that stared down into mine, lust and hatred filled. Hello, KC, Damon grinned, his hands pinning my wrists against the wall above my head. My wolf howled as his cool, minty breath and my face, sending goosebumps racing up my arms. D. Damon, I attempted a growl, but it came out nervous and shaky. He grinned, leaning in towards me, his lips brushing along mine. Electricity seemed to flash through me, making my legs buckle beneath me, but Damon's grip on my wrists kept me up. He hummed against my neck, his lips placing small kisses over my sensitive skin. Gee, get away from me, Damon, at the same time biting back the moan that attempted to escape. My wolf howled with pleasure as Damon continued to trail his lips up my neck, his nose grazing my jaw. I don't think you want that, now do you? His lips tugging into a sexy grin. His seductive voice was making my wolf insane, demanding for more attention. But I fought against her, not about to give in to the bully that ruined my young life. Why yes, I emolescaped my lips as his tongue skimmed my skin, sending my wolf into utter insanity. Damon chuckled, his other hand firmly placing itself on my hip. The next instant, I found myself facing the wall, both Damon's hands on my hips, my hands pinned by my own body. A gasp prayed itself from my mouth, Damon's hands tightening on me. You what? He breathed in my ear, brushing my hair back behind my shoulder, revealing my neck and face to him. He pressed himself against me, my heart beating against the inside of my ribcage like horse hooves racing across pavement. My breath hitched when I felt every bit of Damon against me, my wolf purring with pleasure and lust. What was that you wanted? KC Damon asked again, nibbling my ear. I bit my lip, barely able to hold back the series of moans. What are you? I mumbled, my voice barely louder than a raspy whisper. My fangs grew out and my wolf was on the verge of taking over, begging for my mate to claim me. I want you to get away from me, I snarled, baring my canines. I knew he was turning my game back around on me, targeting what hit me hardest just like I did with him in the boys' bathroom earlier that day. Damon growled taunting lie, pressing his hips closer against mine, forcing out another gasp. Or you'll tear off the family inheritance, I threatened through clenched teeth, feeling his body instantly stiffen, his breathing slowing. Just a parting message, Daisy, his voice low and intimidating. Don't play this game with me, or I'll play you right back. With that, he gave me a shove as he stormed out of my room, slamming the door behind him. Now he was just challenging the wolf to play a better game. 2 words for him, challenge accepted. Chapter 20 Kick But Talent KC SP. OV. Hey there, beautiful, just unchuckled, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. I giggled as I turned to give him a quick kiss on the cheek. Yeah, I guess you could have called us boyfriend, girlfriend, but it wasn't official. Neither of us asked each other out, but we spent a lot of time together, so yeah, we were pretty much a couple. What's up? I grinned, pulling my books from locker before slamming it closed, turning to walk with him down the hall. Not much, just wanted to see how the most amazing girl in school was. His arm wrapped securely around my shoulders. I rolled my eyes, but my smile not faltering. I wasn't exactly into the lovey, break-up or relationship kind of thing, but I guess I could tolerate it with Justin, especially since it drove Damon insane. Everything's all good. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Tilting my head against his shoulder. Casey. OMG Casey. Casey. I heard someone screaming down the hall, several pairs of shoes slapping against the cool grey and black tiles. Justin and turned to see Maggie sprinting clumsily down the hall. A huge smile spread across Maggie's excited face. To our agent extraordinaire, Madeline, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Amused by my friend's crazy eagerness. Look. Maggie chanted, holding up a flyer to my face. Student talent show. All acts welcomed. I read aloud carelessly, not seeing the big woo. Maggie and Amber looked at me, waiting for me to do something, maybe even look excited. Your point? Raising my eyebrows at the poster. Maggie moaned while Amber slapped her forehead, both of them obviously annoyed. We should enter. Maggie yelled, shaking the poster violently. I continued to stare blankly. Maggie, you can sing. Amber can sing. Danica can't sing. KC cannot sing, I stated with a shrug. Amber and Maggie exchanged a glance before rolling their eyes. That's pupil snooker. We know you can sing. Everyone can sing. And we know you're an epic drummer, Amber said, Maggie raising her eyebrows in pure sass. I pursed my lips, considering the idea. I don't know. I haven't played the drums since 9th grade. I couldn't take them in the move. Offering another shrug. Oh, shush up. That's not bad. It's not like you suddenly got freaking amnesia and for play. Plus, Abby has a drum set I'm sure she'd let you borrow. Maggie said, bouncing on the balls of her heels as if that was the only way she could release all that energy she had. Can you please at least consider it? Amber pleaded, Maggie giving me an innocent wide-eyed look. I didn't want to make any promises yet, but I couldn't say no. I guess I could think about it, but don't get your hopes up, I replied, feeling defeated. Just unchuckled as Maggie clapped her hands excitedly and Amber gave out a small joyful squeal before prancing off, probably to ask Danica if they hadn't already. I think you should do it, Justin said with an encouraging grin. Seriously. Yeah, we'd love to hear you sing, he beamed, unwrapping me from under his arm to lean against the wall. I crossed my arms as I smirked at him. You're such a freak in flat. The look he gave me making my wolf hungry. It was a second later when I noticed Damon down the hall that I realized it probably was just and making my wolf lustful. But my Nate. Stealing a glance in his direction, I noticed his eyes were trained hard on Justin, bearing furious and spiteful holes into him. I grinned, returning my gaze back to Justin, a seductive grin slithering to my face as I closed the small space between us, snaking my arms around his neck as I pressed my hips against his. You mean that's not what you love about me? Justin grinned, his arms wrapping around my waist, holding me closer to him. My wolf purred with delight. I guess any lustful attention, especially since being rejected, would be enough to please her. You're still doing it. Slowly moving closer towards him. But instead of replying with another taunting remark, he pressed his gentle lips tenderly to mine. I could practically feel Damon's eyes devouring me, his possessive alpha wolf probably furious and bathing in aggressive rage. Poor self, warring wolf. Note the sarcasm. Dang. KC just unchuckled when I pulled away, a heated gleam in his dark ocean blue eyes that made my wolf and I both feel overpowering and in control. Something not many female wolves can feel once they're mated to their overly possessive and controlling males. Being the independent lone wolf seemed like a better option anyway, especially when you had a demonic mate like mine. I stood beside Dylan in a pair of sweats and a sports bra, my arms crossed as I surveyed the group of younger werewolves, who were old enough to shift but still pretty young, before me who have obviously never been in combat before. Now that is just a horrible punishment. My friend, how's your game with Damon going? Dunn whispered to me as we waited for the all-amazing Alpha Pain in the RS to join us for the training session. Interesting, I responded, unable to think of better words to describe the little thing Damon and I had going on. Achias decided to try and turn the tables on me. The keyword being try, I snickered, rolling my eyes. Dance scoffed, finding it just as amusing as I had. How much longer do you think it'll be before he snaps? I questioned with a comical grin, not believing HE to be able to keep it together much longer. HED begging on his knees for me any day. Then HED see how funny it is to be slowly unwound and defeated. Well, if his wolf doesn't shred him within the next couple days, it'd say HE's a bottomless black pit of hate. Even him having trouble not being attracted to you, he joked, laughing as I gave him a friendly shove. Well, that's what I'm aiming for. Just hanging around Justin is enough to set the guy off. I scoffed as a picture of Damon's pissed face flashed behind my eyes, contorted with passionate rage and the need to control. Oh, speaking of the devil, Dan said, nodding past the teens. I smirked up at Damon as he stiffly walked towards us, his face tight, meaning something was bothering him. And please, let that bother be me. 'Bout time you came. Where've you been? Dan raised his eyebrows in question. Damon threw him a quick glare as he stood beside him in front of the kids. Away, he stated rather coldly. I rolled my eyes, crossing my arms before moving on and glancing around at the bored faces gathered in front of us, sizing up who or what we had to work with. Any ideas how to start? Dan asked nervously, staring at the 14, 15, and 16-year-olds in front of us, blankly staring up at the three superior wolves that were Damon. Dan. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. I have an idea. Taking a couple steps back. All right, peoples. Watch me and everything I do. Dan, when I say go, I want you to try and punch me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I instructed, standing roughly 6 feet away from the two boys. I got nods of agreement from the kids, but Dan just furrowed his eyebrows at me like I had lost my mind. I don't punch girls, not even badass werewolf girls. Dan excused, shaking his head defiantly. I rolled my eyes, overestimating the beta boy. Come on, man up you wimp, I moaned, not having the time to be arguing with him. It looked as though he was about to respond in defense when Damon pushed past him. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Let me do it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. His eyes furiously locked on me. I couldn't help the grin that tugged at the corners of my lips as his fist clenched tightly by his sides. He snarled as he charged for me, anger flashing before his eyes. I heard gasps come from the kid's direction as I ducked beneath his flying fist, slipping under his arm and around him, grabbing him firmly by the shoulders and jetting my knee into the back of his, making his legs buckle. He fell forward, his eyes dazed as he slowly caught up to everything that just happened. Those were some self-defense classes you took there. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Dan gaped as I returned to my place in front of the class. I might be exaggerated a bit on the self-defense classes. I had a personal gym in the basement. I murmured to Dan before turning to the students. Did y'all see what I did when he tried to hit me? The first thing you want to do is dodge any hit. But if someone kicks for you, here's what you do. I continued, making Dan face me. He didn't look too sure, but he swung his foot up at me, aiming for my face. Unable to bite back the smirk, I swiftly caught his ankle inches from my flesh, grabbing it with both hands and giving it a sharp jerk to the left, spilling Dan over and onto his stomach. What if they come from behind? I heard someone call out. You didn't have to be a genius to know that one very pissed off Damon was propouts from behind. Just as a snarl rang through the air, I dropped to the ground, swinging my leg around and feeling my shin connect with Damon's ankles, causing him to lose his balance. If they're not dead or unconscious, you can be sure they'll try to take another swing at you, I taught, offering a supportive smile to the wide-eyed children. Now, if you'll want, partner up and try some of these moves on your own. I suggest starting with dodging before moving on to actual physical contact. To my agent extraordinaire, meticulously, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Watching as they eagerly scramble to their feet, excited to try the acts out for themselves. Damn. To my agent extraordinaire, meticulously, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Dan groaned, slowly getting to his feet, but leaning awkwardly as if to avoid adding pressure to the ankle I had abused. Enough anger can make a girl do that. Pretending to be more interested in my nails than what was going on. And that's why I stay on your good side. Brushing the dirt of his jeans and t-shirt. Please, I've seen pinnacones more aggressive than you. Damon sneered, his eyes dark and full of agitation and a hint of embarrassment. I mean, I don't see why he could possibly be embarrassed. It's not like a 100-something-pound teenage girl kicked his ass or anything. Must be being some freak in badass pinnacones then. Sparing him an amused and teasing glance. He grunted, storming past me to go to a couple of the kids who were on the ground and abusing each other, splitting the two up. Damon's P.O.V. tearing the two children apart, while at the same time sending them to the opposite sides of the field and away from each other. My wolf was going ballistic, watching KC get aggressive, and in just a pair of sweats in a perfect-fitting sports bra that made my throat go dry. A defensive, strong, slick, and feral female wolf is everything my wolf wanted. It was just too bad it had to be freaking Blazy. KC was born a lunar. John's words popped into my head, sending a chill down my spine. I hated that he was right, that this proved how right he was about her. She was everything my wolf could ever wish for, incredibly strong, extremely sexy, and seductively possessive. Every male's dream, that is, if she was born to be a failure in most of life, but... No, she was not ever going to be my mate, and definitely not my lunar. It rather had been mated to a fragile and pleasing human girl. Any respect I had and the grip I had on my pack would be all gone and wasted the moment it slipped that KC was supposed to be my mate. Everybody expects the alpha to have the perfect mate who is capable of leading a pack, and KC is not that mate. Any other girl, maybe, but not the old Katie Blair's E. All I hoped is that I could get my wolf to see clearly who my mate really was, and to side with me against her. But when I glanced back towards her, a wave of calmness coursed deep through my body. One of the smaller kids, maybe 4 years old, wandered too closely to the battling teens and got tackled, scraping his elbow. The way KC bent down and carefully scooped the little boy up, cradling him as she examined the scrape, you'd think it was the poor identical twin of the hostile girl that sent the boys twice her size to the ground just a couple minutes ago. The image of KC as a mother suddenly pulsed behind my eyes, clear and painfully believable. The small bundle held securely in her arms as she cooed inaudible things to it. She would be defensive of her young, though. Anyone with eyes could see that. But who would the father be? My jaw clenched as I pushed the thoughts away, my mind beginning to travel to more rated R things, many of which involved KC incredibly close. My wolf was antsy and anxious just at the thought of all the things I would do to my mate. I growled at myself, angrily pinching the bridge of my nose and trying to clear my head of all the intense thoughts that made my wolf starving. I turned my back to the temptation that toyed with my thoughts and returned back to the younger wolves, all of them still trying to master the maneuvers. I was really starting to question whether it was even possible to get my wolf to turn his back on KC, even if she used to be the waste of space and air that roamed around the halls at school. She was undeniably different now, but that should mean nothing to me. Yo, Damon, you just gonna stand there in space or go split em up again? Dan's voice broke into my thoughts and bringing me back to reality to see the two boys fighting again, getting in the middle of other groups. Advancing towards them, life always had a way of screwing with me. Chapter 21 Claws and Dresses, so, will you do it? Maggie, Amber, and Danica all looked up at me with hopeful eyes. I sighed. Of course I had found time between homework, patrol, dinner, and sleep to figure out whether or not I wanted to do the stupid talent show in school or not. But I knew I had to come up with an answer than answer there, and then or I would be pestered with it later. Sure, why not? Watching my friends' faces brighten as I gulped down some of my water. So, what song did you have in mind? Crossing my arms as I sat back in my chair. Well, we narrowed it down to these four, Maggie informed, handing me a sheet of paper. I glanced down the small list of songs and was quick to make my decision. I didn't even hesitate before circling the one I believed we should do before handing it back. Good choice. I think we should do that one too. Amber grinned proudly as the three girls stared down at the circled choice. Danica and Maggie agreed, almost hesitantly, but they thought any of the other choices were just a bit better. Cool then. We can meet up today in my room after I attend another little training session. Popping a potato chip into my mouth. Yes, Mun. Danica mock salute. So now that that's settled, where's Mr. Blaise? The three of them grinned slyly at me, and it didn't take me long to figure out who Mr. Blaise was. Justin had a student council meeting, so it's just us for lunch, I replied, giving each of them a look. They giggled, settling back in their chairs and starting to discuss classes and all that boring regular teen conversations. However, it wasn't long till everything went from boring and normal to crazy and spontaneously annoying. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Excuse me, can I have all your attention, please? My mother's voice broke through the subtle chatter of the lunchroom. Feeling already slightly embarrassed and out of place, I turned around in my seat to see the principal, who was my mother, standing by the doors, holding a microphone at her hand and ready to announce something exciting. Good afternoon, everyone, she smiled warmly, glancing around the room. So, it had come to my attention when I first got here that Ashington High School hasn't had a senior prom for years now because of budget cuts. Is that right? She paused as a wave of murmured yeses traveled through the cafeteria. Well, I am very pleased to announce that because of recent fundraisers by the students and faculty, we are able to afford at 12th grade prom. She proclaimed very excitedly with a wide grin on her lips. Excitement was painted all over the students' faces, and a few cheers and claps erupted from several people around the room. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. We'd still need parents and teachers to chaperone, a DJ hired, and we will have a queen and king. If anyone has parents that would like to volunteer, please contact the main office, as goes for nominees for the king and queen. Thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful day. She shared another smile before turning to walk out, talking to one of the teachers as she left. The room returned to its usual talking, except slightly more excited. I really do like your mom. KC, Danica beamed with extreme excitement. First the talent show, now a dance. Best principal ever. Maggie clapped, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. I just moaned dramatically loud, accompanied with an eye roll. What now? Oscar the Grouch. Amber joked, tucking her long red hair behind her ear to reveal her bright ice blue eyes. I hate dances and most other social school events. I groaned, having an infamous flashback of one being ruined by bullies. Remember the middle school ones we went to in middle school? Instantly their smiles faltered, and I knew which event in particular they were thinking of. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. No one could leave me alone out of school just as much as in it. Like others, I'd dress a bit nicer than I would in school, but I felt self-conscious and I had every right to be. I mean, I was laughed at for being a bit round, which I was. To one of them in the late spring, I wore a pair of silver sequined sandals with jean shorts, a black kami under an almost see-through white shirt with a tiger on it, and just because I wanted to, a white bandana. It wasn't long that I was there before boys began making rude comments and girls gossiping. Eventually I retreated to the small space between the speakers by the stage. Well, it's different now. Plus, it's fancy dresses, not casual. You can't go wrong with that, Danica said, clearly trying to make everything sound better. Shrinking farther down in my seat. Whatever, hoping that I might be able to find a way out of going. I don't know when it was, but if I could convince my mom that maybe I was sick that night, I might be able to stay home. Unfortunately, she's smart, so I'd really have to make it believable. Okay, so yesterday we learned defense. So today we'll learn offense. If that's the right words to use. I questioned myself as I got ready to show the pups more techniques. Not only did I take some good self-defense classes in New York, I picked up some moves from television and from friends who took judo and taekwondo. Wait, what about Damon? Dion asked, noticing the alpha's absence. God knows where he is. He was late yesterday too, and I don't see the point in waiting another 5 minutes for him. He shows up on time or he doesn't. Easy as that. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Adjusting the fingerless gloves on my knuckles. Yeah, but he'd rather you beat the crap out of that training dummy than me. Dan exclaimed, sounding nervous as he took a step back away from me. I rolled my eyes at his sensitivity. Oh, grow a pair, Mr. Beta. I'm sure you can take a hit or two. Giving him a look that pretty much claimed he was laughably weak. Ice packs are already in the freezer. Right. Dan tried to grin with a sense of humor as he rolled up his sleeves in preparation. Wait, Casey. One child called out questionably. Aren't we going to shift? It was a 14-year-old girl with long white blonde hair. Waiting for somebody to ask that. Later on. Maybe. But not now. I explained. Fighting with fists and feet instead of claws and teeth can be an advantage. Plus the better you are at fighting in human from the even better you are at fighting as a wolf. Looks of understanding grew on the children's faces, and they nodded eager to learn. Well, except for poor Dan. I ushered for Dan to stand barely 2 feet away from me, his muscles tensing in possible fear. Good. Always a little good in that. Giving everybody a second to prepare themselves, I lunged for Dan, grinning when my fist didn't connect with his face. Good. He was deciding to give me a challenge. Without thinking about it, I swung my foot up, ready to feel it connect with his chest, but my grin only widened when it didn't. I caught a quick glimpse where he was and was swift to wrap my hand around his neck, spinning him around and forcing him to the ground. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He moaned through gritted teeth, trying not to show his pain face. I jumped back from him before extending my arm to help him up, which he stiffly accepted before rubbing his sore throat. Easy as pie. Turning back to the pups. That's when I noticed the taller figure sticking out among them, Dame and piercing me with a craved and controlling look that made my wolf almost, and I mean almost, To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It's easy because HE's not fighting back. Damon scoffed, his arms firmly crossed. Rogues won't hesitate in killing you, children or not. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I placed my hands on my hips assertively, narrowing my eyes at him. If you're going to learn anything, it needs to be both defense and offense. Damon, don't forget they're just kids. It's easier to take it a step at a time, Dan tried to say, but Damon was clearly ignoring him as he turned his attention to me. I'll give you a real challenge. Rogues won't go easy. Fine. Alpha boy, show me what you got. I lured, my wolf purring with the satisfaction of having to get the chance to impress my mate while kicking his butt in his process. Wait, what? Before I could second-guess my thought and choice of words, Damon snarled as he pounced, his hands reaching for my neck. I distractedly ducked beneath him, straightening myself before spinning around to face him. I was just barely able to dodge his fist as it struck for my face, missing me by only a few centimeters. Not giving myself another second, I gripped his wrist and twisted it behind him, giving me the opportunity to get my arm locked securely around his neck. It was then that I felt the electric shock course through my veins, sending goosebumps racing down my arms. I felt Damon's breath hitch under the weight of my arm, but he clearly didn't let it take effect because he was somehow able to flip me over his head and onto my back on the ground, knocking the wind out of my lungs. I quickly sucked in some air and rolled out of the way as his foot came down where my chest was a second ago. Growling, I kicked his ankles, sending him off balance into the ground flat on his back. I didn't hesitate before pouncing, placing my hands firmly around his neck. However, he was able to get his hands tightly wound around mine, rolling so he was on me while I was flat on the ground. I wouldn't let him have the advantage, pressing my knee against his chest and rolling so I had him pinned again. Damn, why did he have to be so freaking strong? His chiseled chest rippled beneath me as he adjusted his fingers on my neck, my knee pressing tighter against him. Hey guys. I felt Dan's hands grip my waist as he pried me off of Damon, the alpha snarling in protest. We're not accomplishing anything, Dan stated, pulling me away from Damon, my eyes still locked and narrowed on him as he got up from the ground, his black eyes focused on me as well. I glanced back at the pups who were staring wide-eyed at me and Damon, either afraid or shocked. I couldn't tell. But Dan was right, just watching Damon I wrestle was going to help that much. Just sticking to the step-by-step thing would be so much easier for them to understand. Yeah, but I gotta go. Pointing to my watch. I'm sure you and Damon can handle this easy. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Patting his shoulder before sprinting off towards the pack house, ready to start practicing the drums Abby was so kind to lend. I mean, if I was going to be part of this talent show, better make our performance something no one was going to forget. Damon's P. Oh, Fee. My heart beating against the inside of my rib cage as I watched KC sprint away, her black hair flowing behind her. My wolf, still panting with excitement, was in torture, having her wrapped around me one second then torn away from me the next. But now she was running off, retreating into the pack house. Hey Earth to Damon, I don't think KC would appreciate you staring at her ass. Dan's voice stuffed through my thoughts, bringing my attention back to him. His eyebrow was cocked in annoyance and amusement. I growled at him, turning my attention back to the pups. Just back off, man, I growled, turning my back to him as I lifted my shirt over my head, kicking off my shoes before shifting and circling the group of children. They hesitated, but followed my lead, the slim figures turning into slightly bulky and furry ones. "Damon," KC said, then began, but I cut him off with a growl, snapping my jaws in his direction. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he narrowed his eyes at me as he crossed his arms, standing back and clearly refusing to shift. A growl erupting from my chest, I turned my back to him before silently nodding, ushering that the children follow. Training our forest terrain would be more direct and advantageous than packhouse grounds. At least the pups would be more aware of their surroundings. Especially if we take the fight to the rogues instead of waiting around like sitting ducks. KCSP. OV. I spun the drumstick between my fingers, waiting patiently behind the midnight blue and black percussion drums for Amber to tune her bass. Why they decided to start setting up as I entered my room and not ahead, I won't ever for the life of me know. All I know is that it's 10 minutes past starting time and my butt was already starting to cramp up from the cushion stool. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Amber, I think it's tuned. Danica finally yelled, throwing her hands up in irritation as Amber strummed one note continuously. The redhead jumped, startled, before sticking her tongue out at Danica in response, adjusting the bass strap around her shoulders. Yeah, I still need to figure out the tune of this song, so the sooner we start the better, Maggie added, waving the lyric sheets in the air. To substitute as a microphone, she clutched a hairbrush in her hair. Clutch, I know, but it worked. And I think I got the tune down, but I ain't so sure, I said warily, going over the beat in my head again, and when I needed to play. Amber just nodded as she began strumming the opening tune. Danica tapped her foot to the rhythm behind the keyboards, double-checking to make sure her instrument was set just right. The first verse smoothly spilled from Maggie's lips as her eyes darted across her lyric sheets. I followed with my beat, singing backup with Danica and Amber. I'd heard the song enough in the past few weeks to almost remember it by heart, considering I felt like it was my life being broadcasted through the radio. I picked up my rhythm as the music tensed and the lyrics were strained and fighting, the tune picking up and accelerating towards the chorus. We were on a roll when there was a loud echoing knock on the door that screwed up everybody's concentration. "What?" I shouted as I stood from the drums and marched my way over towards the door, swinging it open to see Dan's slightly frowning face. He didn't say anything as he pushed past me and stomped across my room until his face planted onto my bed, yelling into the sheets. Why is it always my room? I questioned myself silently as I stared at my friends' abashed looks as they stared down at Dan with curious and confused faces. "You okay?" Amber asked, poking Dan in the shoulder. He just moaned louder into the sheets. "No, I am not," he stated tiredly. "It's like working with an ignorant 10-year-old. What is?" Maggie interrogated, her arms crossed. "Damon. He thinks he knows what he's doing, but he doesn't," Dan informed, rolling onto his back, his arm lying across his eyes. "If anyone knew what they were doing, that DBU, Casey. I know what I'm doing." Amber gasped, pushing herself into the subject. "You never know what you're doing, let alone what's going on." Dan almost grinned humorously, receiving a growl and friendly swat from Amber. "What's he doing?" Danica asked, the opposite of Casey. "Having them shift, then taking them into the woods." Moving his arm away and using it to support him as he sat up to look at us. "It really makes you ponder." Maggie stroked her chin mockingly, yet with a hint of seriousness behind it. "Makes you ponder what?" I had to laugh as Amber joined Maggie in stroking their imaginary beards. "Who's a better alpha? Clearly, that DBU. If Damon really cared about his pack, I'd cheat him up and find the guts to make you." Dan blurted as if he'd been holding it in for a while and was dying to say it aloud. But I don't want to be his freaking mate. A cheersager. Always has been and always will be. I argued, getting frustrated at the thought of ever forgiving that son of a witch who practically ruined a majority of my childhood. I don't know about that. The always will be part. But just consider it. Dan shrugged. Amber and Maggie giving a roll of their eyes. Good. At least I had some people on my team who understood. Thanks for your words of wisdom. Oh, wise and insightful one, I said sarcastically, shaking my head. Any time, he smirked as he fell back down on the bed, his hands locked behind his head. Amber kicked his shin before turning her back to him, ignoring his teasing purr. I preferred it when cheesy jokes came out your mouth instead. To my eighteenth extraordinaire, Mylan Milburn, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Returning back to my drums and attempting to get comfortable on the stiff stool. I knew you liked them. No, I didn't say I liked them. I said I preferred them. I replied, throwing my drumstick at him. It bounced off his chest and flew to the other side of the room. They're better than the crap that's coming out of your mouth now. To my eighteenth extraordinaire, Mylan Milburn, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Now go get my drumstick. Well, you should still consider what I said. Getting up from the bed and grabbing my drumstick from the floor, returning it to me. He shoved his hands into his pockets as he walked out of the room. We waited till his footsteps faded before Amber spoke up. I swear to God, that boy gets weirder every time he talks to us, she murmured under her breath, fussing giggles from Danica and Maggie. I just zoned out, unable to shake off Dan's words about Damon. He may not care about his pack, but I certainly do. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next exciting installment.